So we are a little bit late, and we have a large set of speakers. So everyone, can you just sit? You can join the second line. I think, you know, it's done for you to join the conversation at one point. Just to say that the session is being recorded. It's live stream also on the website of FIX. And the LinkedIn and all of the networks that are fit for our conversation. Laurence, you want to begin, maybe?
Yes, thank you, Carlos. So, good afternoon, everyone. Well, it's a real pleasure to welcome you to this breakout session called Addressing the Euro. Okay, no, I was afraid like climate change created some sort of delete. So the session addressing the urban climate finance gap, partnering for change at the 2025 FIX Summit. So today we gather an impressive diversity of stakeholders from ministers, mayors, public development banks, networks and coalition, UN agency and private sector to discuss concrete solutions for scaling up urban climate finance. No need to recall how important cities and urban are to face climate change. Of course, both in terms of investments for mitigation and adaptation, but maybe as and more importantly, in terms of local politics. This is the place where we meet citizens to discuss, to make the difficult choice that has to be made both in terms of mitigation and adaptation. So all cities and local government are the front line of the climate crisis. And the financing gap remains significant with an estimate of 800 billion needs by 2030. So we believe that coordinated partnership, innovating financing instruments and localizing finance, all the key to driving real change. So today's session, of course, build on the long-lasting dynamic of conversation, notably the Urban Climate Finance Roundtable at COP29, and aims to set a strong narrative towards finance for development and the African G20 and COP30. So we are not just here to discuss challenge, but to try to identify and push collectively actionable solutions that can be carried forward to the global stage.
Thank you, Laurence. As you can see, we are reading our script because we want to show that the moderators don't speak too much instead of the speakers. Our session today will unfold in 3 dynamic roundtables, each focusing on a key dimension of urban climate finance. The first roundtable, Scaling Up Urban Climate Finance, where we will hear from multilateral and private sector leaders about their strategies and commitments to bridge the urban financing gap. The second one, Localizing Urban Climate Finance, highlighting how subnational development banks can become last-mile banks, ensuring that global funds reach the local needs. The third roundtable, maybe one of the most important ones, Partnerships, where we will explore successful collaboration models and innovative partnerships that can accelerate access to sustainable and climate urban finance. But first of all, we are honored to introduce our keynote speakers, who not only represent South Africa, the host of the first ever African G20, but also serve as influential voices for their global constituencies. Dr. Namane Dixon Masemola, Deputy Minister of the Department of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs, COCTA, welcome. And Mr. Dada Morero, Mayor of Johannesburg and Chair of FMDV. We look forward to their perspectives on how urban development ministries, cities and regions can collaborate with key actors within the urban climate finance ecosystem. Deputy Minister, if you are ready, you can take the floor. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much, Program Director, moderators present here this afternoon, all distinguished guests, and my colleague, the Executive Mayor of the City of Johannesburg, and all ladies and gentlemen in attendance. Good day. I would like to begin by expressing my sincere appreciation for this invaluable opportunity to participate in this important summit representing Government of National Unity led by President Matamela Ramaphosa and our Department of COGTA in particular. This gathering is not only timely, but also highly relevant as South Africa, like the rest of the world, continues to grapple with the far-reaching and often devastating impact of climate change. These challenges pose the shifting weather patterns, extreme climate events, and environmental degradation demand of us collective leadership and as well as innovative solutions to the problems realized. Platforms like this summit provides a critical space for meaningful dialogue, collaboration, and exchange of ideas that will help us to build resilience, drive sustainable development, and protect our communities and ecosystem of the future generations and the cities of tomorrow, given the phenomenon of global urbanization and the need to deal with matters of cities' developmental challenges. As we all know, the effects of climate change are already being felt in many communities across the world and throughout the global economy. Climate-driven events have dominated headlines in recent periods. Increasingly and frequently, these extreme weather events affect millions of people worldwide with cataclysmic consequences. In South Africa, climate change has long been a measurable reality where we have felt its effect in adverse weather conditions experienced through droughts, flooding, blizzards, and as well as rising temperatures. Not only that, its devastating impact on the existing infrastructure with the resultant effect on water, sanitation, housing, roads, and electricity infrastructure, and the damage to local environment. And as government, we are committed to working together with various stakeholders, both in the country and globally, to find solutions. Therefore, cities in our country and globally, and most probably also in the continent, have a crucial role to play in anticipating and coping with climate challenges and to increase investments and ensure robust policies and urban planning to translate global climate targets into local achievable solutions. In this regard, it becomes important for multilateral and regional development banks to scale up their support for local projects to meet the ever-continuous challenges relating to climate change, without which their constraints abound beyond imagination. The interconnectedness, therefore, of the banking ecosystem is critical to recognize the need for funding. Hence, the discussions on reforms of the global finance architecture is essential. Therefore, this conversation in this conference seeks to advance a debate in this regard so that cities and districts would benefit from the available resources should be made available by financing organizations to obviate the permitting and prevailing circumstances as a consequence of climate change. This is why it has become increasingly critical to develop local climate plans where cities commit to strengthening their climate resilience, raising their adaptive capacities, reduce their emissions, improve their disaster preparedness, upgrade response strategies, and adopt strong adaptation and as well as mitigation measures. This requires integration of urban climate finance into national commitments to support an intervention in cities and as well as districts of our country. Therefore, alignment and coordination is cardinal to our successful support and intervention in this regard. Ladies and gentlemen, the discussions at the Urban Climate Finance Roundtable at COP29 in November 2024 highlighted the current funding gap that cities across the world provide about 7 to 8% of the required funding. Key to the discussions was the emphasis on the importance of cooperation between governments, financial institutions, and as well as international organizations to bridge the funding gap. As we are meeting here today representing different institutions and government, possibly carrying perspectives from various countries, we should underscore the role of the subnational governments in building capacity and resilience to deal with matters of climate change. They should be supported in this regard, this subnational government, and enabled through financial support to perform their responsibilities in this regard, given the challenges confronted by their own localities. Indeed, they are well placed to execute the task and carry the mandate. They are at the cold phase of delivery service delivery, and they are facing on a daily basis desperate community conditions that need urgent attention for conducive and habitable spaces. As such, access to loss and damage fund cannot be over-accentuated, given the need for local responses through empowered systems and as well as capabilities. In this regard, partnerships play a key role in sustainable urban development initiatives by allowing diverse resources, knowledge and skills to be combined, maximization of the positive impact on the environment for local economy and as well as the quality of the citizens' life. We therefore need to strengthen multilateral partnerships to maximize the opportunities that exist nationally, continentally, and globally to respond to the climate impacts affecting our cities and districts across the world. Ladies and gentlemen, this year, 2025, as the country, we will be hosting G20 Summit as the first ever without parallel and remarkable meeting of the heads of states globally. And of course, it will be held here in South Africa, in our continent, for the first time, which is said to be preceded by not less than 100 meetings as platforms created for exchange on matters of global importance. This summit, therefore, provide us an opportunity, particularly those of us who are located in local government, given our role in urban and rural development, to lead, fashion, and influence global debates and elevate our continent's urban climate finance priorities on the global stage. The reality is that this area of challenges in the African continent and our country in particular is indeed underfunded, probably due to biased engagements on global funding, a matter that should not escape our attention going forward, given our position as a sphere where development takes place at the local government level. Equally, as a country, we need that financial support, given what I've already referred to above about the climate change-related challenges. This upcoming summit, ladies and gentlemen, and beyond, inevitably locate us strategically as local government ministries and municipal leaders, firstly, to shape global agenda in funding urban and rural priorities by advocating reforms of global financial systems. We need to be able, with our support and working together, the need to build climate change resilient infrastructure and maintenance of the existing ones for social and economic use, which remains a daunting task given the budget constraints experienced by cities and as well as districts in our country. We need to work together very strongly to promote stronger integration and localization of global climate finance by influencing a shift in policy approach and as well as support. That we need to assert ourselves as crucial partners for successful local responses based on proper funding and capacity. In this regard, our collective negotiating skills and capacity should be demonstrated in the interest of our cities and districts. And of course, as leaders in this sector, in this ministry, both in the country and the continent, who are called upon to work together with the development finance institutions to deal with this matter. We've got to make sure to lead and appropriately locate policy to focus on local conditions for the benefits of the local communities who get severely affected by these ever-changing weather conditions. That we should work hard to secure resources to drive sustainable, just, and resilient urbanization as a global, unavoidable phenomenon and respond to the demands of regional developments, which of course characterizes many of our big cities, our metros in this country. And this reality cannot be over-accentuated, and therefore need for funding, collaboration, and collective management of related difficulties remains the challenges that we should be able to deal with at this point in time. Ladies and gentlemen, given that urban climate resilience is a cross-cutting issue, as cooperative governance and traditional affairs in the Republic of South Africa, we have adopted what is called Integrated Urban Development Framework, IUDF, a policy framework that seeks to foster all of government, all of society approach on how we could collaboratively manage urbanization to achieve socio-economic development and goals, ensure spatial governance and efficiency of the available resources. Obviously, this policy mandate requires partnerships, including development finance institutions, to avail the much needed resources for its implementation and realization in the interest of the downtrodden masses of our people who are found in townships, in informal settlements, and of course as well rural communities of our country. Within the context of the Constitution, as listed under Schedule 4 and 5B of our Constitution, metros and district municipalities are required to review, amend, and publish climate change needs and response assessment. And therefore, the National Disaster Management Center, NDMC, has the institutional and systems capacity to respond during moments of disaster, but it needs support as it gets overwhelmed. And many of our provinces, as we're seated here, are struggling to cope with the outcomes or the aftermath of various disasters of whatever kind. Hopefully, this session will help us to find solutions to some of these problems. In extending and strengthening provision of leadership and giving support to municipalities, the President of our country appointed an interministerial committee on municipal support to drive public service efforts and mobilize of budget resource investments for intervention assistance and as well as support. In conclusion, as South Africa, we believe that this discussion in this conference would shape and elevate the need for funding and open streams of financial assistance, given the momentous task confronting us emanating from climate change, of which it would be very difficult without proper and adequate funding. We're looking forward to financial assistance, collaboration in many ways than not, as we travel and as we grapple with this reality. Be rest assured of our political support and commitment as government led by President Ramaphosa of the Republic of South Africa in this daunting task of grappling with the results of climate change in our own cities and our own localities. Thank you very much and wish you a very good conference.
Thank you so much, Deputy Minister, and we're happy to count on the support from South Africa. And I'll give now the floor to Mayor Dada Morero from Johannesburg. For the other speakers, you heard the Minister. We need solutions, and they are calling for inputs coming from you. So the conversation here should feed the conversation also in the G20, and we're counting on this session. Mayor Morero, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair of the session, Carlos. Let me acknowledge the Deputy Minister, Minister Masemola. And let me acknowledge all of you, ladies and gentlemen. As we all know, a large share of cities and regions in the middle and low income countries remain constrained by national fiscal policies and budget allocations to local and regional governments. But the challenge goes beyond that, as cities and regions also face the absence of adequate policy framework and financial architecture at the global level that could ensure direct or facilitated access to climate and development funding and financing. Let me take a moment to acknowledge an important and recent development in response to the letter from the C40 mayors to multilateral development banks, and the multilateral development banks have committed to enhancing subnational access to climate financing. This is a significant step, and we must commend this progress. Yet much remains, of course, there's still much that needs to be done. This is why, to build on the Deputy Minister's inputs, I think we must all together focus on three pillars of action. One, I would propose, first, we need to push for systemic finance architecture that reaches the last mile, that the global financial architecture must be redesigned to support subnational level of action where sustainable, just, and resilient urbanization happens. The reform initiated under the leadership of the Prime Minister of Barbados is a bold and ambitious step, yet it still fails to fully integrate the needs and the opportunities of cities and regions as key drivers of climate transition and adaptation. It does not yet recognize our role as first partners of national governments in implementing global agendas through local planning, investments, and actions. To address this, we need urbanization finance country platforms to be recognized as a priority. These programs must strengthen subnational funding and financing capabilities, especially considering that the SDGs and global agreements depend on local planning and investments for decades to come. So for us to be effective, these programs must, one, coordinate and aggregate development partners' efforts while coaching national needs. Two, be led by domestic champions, national associations of mayors and governors, line ministries, and national and subnational development banks. Program Director, I'm actually pleased to announce that the FMDV, which I have the opportunity to chair, will be testing these countries' platforms in Cameroon and in Madagascar in 2025 and 2026, in addition to several initiatives that are being developed by the development partners and certain national governments. Second, we need professionalized and institutionalized financial intermediation. We must support national systems that localize financing and make their multi-level and multi-stakeholder country platforms a reality. To that end, the national and subnational development banks must be fully engaged in the global reform of multilateral development banks and better integrated into financial architecture as the last mile banking ecosystem. The national development banks and sub-national development banks are well-integrated institutions with deep local knowledge of their clients. They are uniquely positioned to design and implement financial products that are fit for purpose and delivered in local currency. They also have the credibility to become eligible for multilateral funding and financing, serving as key intermediaries in local climate financing and the value chain. We have already made progress on the Global Forum for SDPs and has also been established with 2 regional chapters, one in Latin America and the Caribbean, and one in Africa, both coordinated by FMDV and reporting to the Finance in Common movement. Of course, the role of the SDPs is now being increasingly recognized, including the last year's G20 final declaration. This is a major step forward, but we must continue to push for their full inclusion in financial reforms. They are part of the solution. Finally, we must develop our urban finance engineering. We must develop our finance engineering capacities, and this means supporting the next generation of human capital for the urban transition and setting new elites for change. To do this, we must establish FinHubs, or hubs of financial expertise for urbanization and financing at regional and national levels. These FinHubs will provide technical assistance and financial engineering to support the preparation and restructuring of urban development projects. facilitate better access to funding and financing sources through matchmaking mechanisms, bridge the gap between cities and regions and public and private financiers by fostering a common language and framework for partnerships and deal-making. Moreover, FinHubs will serve as accelerators, helping to design new agile public entities that are investable by both public and private actors. As I conclude, the time for action is now. If we are serious about addressing the failures of the global urban climate finance market, we must embrace these three pillars of action: a systematic financial architecture that prioritizes urban finances, strong financial intermediation, bringing national and sub-national development banks to the table, urban finance engineering capacities that empower cities and regions and drive investment. But of course, we cannot do this alone. To the CEOs of public development banks here today, we need your leadership, we need your expertise and your cooperation. Your mandates are complementary. Your institution each holds a critical piece of the puzzle. It is time to break the silos, coordinate efforts, and ensure that our financing ecosystems, from global MDBs to local SDBs, are working in sync to meet the scale of the challenge. These actions will help us build an inclusive, deal-based financial ecosystem for sub-national investments. They will also assert our role as market makers, not just clients. We are the solution. Let's make sure everyone knows it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Mayor. This is a very clear call to the finance in common system. So now we're going to enter our first roundtable to precisely explore how public development banks and private investors can scale up urban climate finance. And our speaker will share their strategy, really practical insight for mobilizing resources, supporting urban projects, and ensuring finance reach what Mr. Mayor called the last mile. I'm now pleased to invite Mick Zhang, Global Director, Urban Resilience and Land Global Department at the World Bank. As referred in the keynote speech, last week the MDB collectively issued a letter to the C40 mayors with a commitment to scale up urban finance. Given that, what can you share with us what the World Bank intends to put in place to ensure these commitments? Thank you, Mr. Tan.
Thanks a lot. From the World Bank, we are very happy to share some thoughts on this critical challenge. We believe cities are the key to both job creation and climate action. This is particularly true in low and middle income countries, which already house 70% of the global urban population. Many of these cities are still growing rapidly, and most of their infrastructure and housing is yet to be built. These cities, therefore, have the opportunity to develop in more resilient, low carbon, and livable ways than their high-income counterparts. But achieving this will require a level of investment and financial capacity that is currently lacking. We have a study which is ongoing and the report that will be forthcoming called Banking on Cities. The report estimates investment costs for resilient and low-carbon development in critical urban sectors, including transport, solid waste, energy efficiencies in building, water and wastewater, flood protection, and heat protection. This report estimates that from now on until 2050, these investments will cost between 8 and 26 trillion US dollars, which translates to roughly between 1 to 3% of GDP of low and middle income countries annually. In low income countries, costs as a share of GDP are much higher, between 2 and 9% of GDP. In this report, we present some actionable steps towards financing and delivering these investments with 3 key messages. First, before cities can scale up financing from private or repayable sources, they need to build up sources of funding, which are the revenue stream from different kinds of fee service, such as user fees, property tax, transfers from national government, land value capture, carbon credits, and other kind of sources. And these funding sources, revenue streams, are needed to repay the financing and make projects bankable. The second point is that in order to deliver critical investments within limited fiscal space, efficiency savings are important to reduce the investment needs. Cities can develop in ways that are smarter, greener, and more resilient. This includes efficiency through better urban planning, tapping into nature-based solutions and other green infrastructure measures, and aligning incentives of various stakeholders to deliver climate and development goals. A third message of the report is to work on not only the supply of financing, but also municipalities' demand of financing, the capacity to absorb financing, creditworthiness, and so on, as well as the regulatory environment in each country that enables and sometimes prevents municipalities from accessing finance. We hope these findings can inform agenda for all stakeholders at national, local, and international level to begin to address the financing gaps for sustainable urbanization. From the World Bank ourselves, we are trying to tap into the synergy between our public sector arm, the IBRD, IDA, the private sector arm, the International Finance Corporation, and our various guarantee instruments through MIGA to develop a One World Bank Group engagement model to address subnational investment needs. We have identified and started implementing measures to tackle constraints for subnational clients in Brazil, Colombia, India, South Africa, and Turkey, based on a clear articulation of underlying challenges and demonstrable financial additionality. Through this initiative, we're trying to optimize complementarity within the World Bank Group, adopting a cascade of principles to financial mobilization. Finally, we are also working closely with partners beyond the World Bank on subnational financing to increase finance to cities. In response to the letters from mayors from C40, the MDBs jointly responded that we would commit to scaling up urban climate financing and increasing urban climate, especially urban climate adaptation financing. Jointly, we reconfirmed these these objectives and a commitment in recent global forums, such as the World Urban Forum in Cairo and COP20 in Basu. So to conclude, scaling up urban climate financing is an important priority for us at the World Bank, and we look forward to continuing to work closely with all of you and our clients to help doing so. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Tang. I'm pleased now to turn to Mark Bowman, Vice President, Policy and Partnership at EBRD. So EBRD is also party to this MDB dynamic and has among different flagship Green Cities program. Mark, can you share more EBRD intention, initiative, and maybe with a slight focus on the new mandate on Sub-Saharan Africa? Thank you, Mark.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much, Laurence and Carlos, and it's a real pleasure to be here and be talking to you today. So first of all, a word on the EBRD. So we're a private sector focused MDB. We have a mandate to support our countries to transition to sustainable market-based economies. 50% of our investments are green investments. Our business model is to combine investments with policy dialogue and technical assistance. Traditionally, our geographical focus has been Eastern Europe, Central Asia, the Caucasus, Western Balkans. More than 10 years ago, we expanded into North Africa and the Mediterranean region, and I'm very pleased to say that we are now expanding into Sub-Saharan Africa. Our governors, our shareholders have agreed that we can expand into 6 countries, Benin, Cote d'Ivoire, Senegal, Kenya, Nigeria, and Ghana. We're very excited about this. We're currently going through the process whereby countries become members of the bank and countries of operation, but we hope very much that we will begin to make investments in those countries in the course of this year. Then our Green Cities program that you mentioned, and what we are doing to scale up urban climate finance. The EBRD's Green Cities program was developed some 10 years ago in 2015. It's one of our flagship programs. It was very much the kind of formulation of the Green Cities program was very much driven by 3 things. First of all, of course, as we've heard from previous speakers, the recognition that cities are at the front line of the climate crisis, but also at the front line in terms of creating solutions. Secondly, and this echoes what we heard earlier from the Minister and the Mayor, the importance of local decision-making and local buy-in to solutions. And third, a recognition of the importance of combining investments with policy dialogue and a more programmatic approach. So the Green Cities program does take a very programmatic approach. We work with a city signs up to the program, we identify an investment. That could be an investment in electric buses, in charging infrastructure, in wastewater facilities, in flood protection, a kind of whole series of different interventions. And once that investment is identified, we then work with the authorities on what we call a Green Cities Action Plan, which is a comprehensive approach to managing a city on a sustainable basis. As I said, this was the Green Cities program was developed 10 years ago. We're now in the 10th year. The program has grown from strength to strength. We now have more than 50 cities across our region who are signed up. I think 96 projects delivered in 25 countries, over 3 billion euros of investments, and more importantly, investments with impacts. And I think we have calculated that the cumulative total of those investments is the equivalent of having taken 1 million cars off the road each year. What have we learnt from the last 10 years? I think there are a few things that are critically important. First of all, this programmatic approach, the importance of linking investments with policy, with strategic planning. Secondly, our private sector focus, but our ability to also invest in the public sector, to do both public and private investment. Thirdly, our ability to lend directly to cities, and to lend without, in some circumstances, without recourse to the sovereign, without a sovereign guarantee. And then finally, the power of the network we have built, the fact that the mayors, city leaders of all the cities as part of the program have a forum where they can share experience and share what works and what doesn't work. Going forward, we are very optimistic about the program. I'm very pleased that our board agreed at the end of last year a €3 billion top-up to the facility. That will allow the network to grow significantly in the coming years, both in our traditional region, but also we're very excited about rolling out this program in our new region in Sub-Saharan Africa. We are very much focused both on expanding the network of cities, but also deepening our impact focusing on resilient solutions, both mitigation and adaptation, also a focus on capital market transactions, capacity building and knowledge sharing. And of course, everything we do will very much be driven by partnership and working with many of the organisations that are represented in this room. Then just finally to conclude, and many people have mentioned the, including the Mayor, the response from the MDBs, the letter from the MDBs. I'm very pleased that I was a co-signatory of this letter. Just to say that there are plans in place to organise an event in Washington during the World Bank IMF meetings, similar to something we did last year, but a very good opportunity to continue the discussion we are having today and can keep the momentum going forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I'm particularly interested in the direct lending to cities, which is absolutely critical in that capacity to scale up in a sovereign debt constraint. I'm now pleased to turn to Ambroise Fayol, Vice President of EIB, which is an essential bank worldwide, but also for Europe. So Ambroise, EIB is historically very active in urban climate finance with key programs such as ELENA, European Local Energy Assistance, and through the GAP Fund together with the World Bank. Well, can you share with us how EIB intend to scale up this initiative or maybe other initiatives? Thanks, the floor is yours.
Merci beaucoup, Laurence. Good afternoon. It's good that you ask different questions to representatives from MDBs, otherwise you would really have the same kind of remarks. EIB is the Bank of the European Union. We have done last year 60% of our activity in climate-related financing, and that means for renewable energy, energy efficiency and transport, 45 billion euros of financing in Europe and outside Europe. And interestingly, your question targets something that seems ancillary actually to this big financing, which is the small amounts that we target for two initiatives, ELENA, which is an initiative inside the European Union for energy efficiency, and the GAP Fund, that is an initiative for cities that is mostly outside Europe, that are initiatives that target project preparation and technical assistance capacity building. And actually it is rightly so, because if you want to have big investment, and there are big investment needed, you need actually really to work on project preparation, project development, and capacity building. And if I can just take a few lessons from what we have developed over the last years in ELENA, that is a project that is supported by the European Commission, or with the GAP Fund, that is a program that is supported, that we do with the World Bank, supported by the German cooperation, GIZ, but also with the Global Covenant of Mayors, for example, or the C40. I mean, it's really a project that interests a lot of people. What I think is important is that you get with this kind of programs a view, if you start early on, a view that is comprehensive, because when you deal with urban policies, you deal with, at the same time, transport, energy, water, wastewater. And you need to deal with that at the same time. And if you want to be as effective as possible, then you need to support the development of city climate strategies, prioritization of investments, and capacity building for urban development. That's what, for example, the GAP Fund is actually working well in Kisumu in Kenya and a few other cities in Kenya. Elena, I would just say that it helps also in another element, which is it gives a lot of leverage. With €1 of investment of Elena, which is helping in developing, for example, technical assistance, putting people that are experts in a few municipalities for some time, that with €1 you have at the end 34 euros of investments. And that, I think, is really something that is part of the success of a strategy. And actually what we have seen in France, for example, in some part of France, is that Elena was able to correct a few investments that were done too early and that were done wrongly in few municipalities. And finally, what I would say is what all this reflects is the need for partnerships. Partnerships with big donors, and that is important at times when we are lagging probably more and more the idea of additional resources. Partnership with other institutions, partnership with our fellow partners in countries like municipalities. All this is key if you want to have investment that are actually answering the needs of the population. And as we know, especially in Africa, developing strategies in cities has become really a key objective for many countries. So we are very pleased to try to help in dealing with this challenge. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And now I'm pleased to turn to Thierry Déo, so the CEO and founding member of Meridiam. So of course, like we've heard, MDB can do a lot, but not all. Meridiam has already a pioneer in terms of private sector urban finance in the developing world and emerging market, which is actually key to meeting urban finance need on that last mile. Well, Thierry, can we share with us, I'm sure you're going to agree with Ambroise Fayol on project preparation and technical assistance needs importance, but what other key factors or conditions do you see as private investors needs most to structure bankable urban climate? And maybe in that regard, how partnership with public development bank can help? Thanks.
Thank you. Perhaps focusing on the urban side of things, because I think this is what sort of multiplies the difficulties in terms of access to capital. But I think we've identified sort of three major areas of obstacle and found somehow a solution to overcome those. The first, of course, is, project preparation, but it's mostly the capacity, especially at the sub-sovereign or city level of the administrations and the political people to actually handle and prepare these type of projects, especially when it comes to adaptation, but also when it comes to mitigation. And they also have the inclusion issue that is always linked to climate. The second area is the difficulty in establishing macroeconomic return for these projects and environmental return that are very clear and compelling, but even harder to define financial sustainability for this project. And the third being the fact that inclusion is at the top of everything, is really handling a very large number of stakeholders within a governance within city, which is very variable depending on the country where you are, and not always, it's very complicated already in OECD countries because cities are a lot of areas, various areas, and how do you engage with communities within city to actually sell projects and make them happen. So these sort of are the three areas. So what we've done concretely on the ground was to partner with a number of institutions and starting with the Rockefeller Foundation and UNCDF, because the whole concept is partnering and blending everything we have together between resources and finance to be able to overcome these challenges and to create this urban resilient fund, also called the International Municipal Investment Fund, and really bringing around a number of DFIs. The EIB is one, but also some other ones, DFC, for example, putting together two investment vehicles. One to support project preparation in a different way, bringing resources together with financing, and that is funded by a number of partners, Rockefeller for sure, but also DFC and PIDGE. And then having an investment vehicle that actually offers private investors protection for downside, when Rockefeller and EIB are actually providing a first loss piece, but also enhancement through a DSC facility, and then crowding in a number of investors between those two layers. So that allows us to do two things. One, to really accelerate the project preparation. I mean, one of a great example that we have in terms of adaptation is the coastal protection project and development in Nouakchott that is ongoing right now. And so that acceleration has really enabled cities and national government to really get behind these type of projects. Providing these layers of security and financing have allowed private investors to come and accept sort of long-term risk-adjusted returns that are reasonable and adapted to adaptation projects in particular, but also to mitigation projects. And that's the way, and clearly the next step is scaling, because obviously with all that we've been able to mobilize around 500 million euros plus the facility for project preparation, but obviously given the needs we probably need a few zeros to that number. So challenge when you create things to address very difficult issues on the municipal level is scaling up, and I think that still remains to be tackled. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Your mic is still on, Thierry. Thank you. This is a good reality check on what can come from private sector, private investors, and complementation to MDB's activities and actions. Second roundtable, localizing this urban climate finance. The goal here is to identify specific needs and mechanisms to ensure SDBs and national development banks and DBs become true SDG enablers. We will also explore how recent institutional advancements, ND, could serve as game changers, elevating urban climate finance to a higher priority on the global agenda. Philippe Akoa, you are the General Director of FECOM, the SDB from Cameroon. You will speak in French, right? Yes?
Oui, je vous remercie. I thank you. I am the Director General of the Special Fund of Equipment and Intercommunity Equipment with the National Bank in Cameroon, which exists. It's been 50 years. We worked with the World Fund to help the development of cities here for the campaign of Habitat 3, which recognized those institutions like actors in the area of development. We have been the author of the creation of the African Network of African Funding Institution for collectivities, and we have also participated in the campaign for the alliance that we have today. But what I would like to say more here, in relation to the discussion, I would like to appreciate the opinion which was first of all developed by the keynote speaker, who acknowledged, who committed himself here for the preparation of the G20 that will take place here in South Africa to raise the issues of our institutions. Equally, what the mayor of Johannesburg said concerning all those aspects. I think that several speakers spoke of the interest here of strengthening the capacity of institutions. The fundamental point I wanted to raise here, which makes our institutions to be intermediary institutions with cities, with government, and also with development partners at the regional and international level. And what I would like to say here, the positioning of our institutions is doubtful for the fact that we have a knowledge of our client base in our cities and the regions. A summit like this one here, in which we speak about finance in common, so it's a very good platform of engagement and gathering government, different stakeholders, to say that our role at the national level is truly important, because they associate themselves with SDGs, so that nobody can be left aside or sidelined for funding or finance. No finance organization or funding organizations at the local level, no SDGs should be set aside. That's why I wanted to say here that we are not positioning ourselves in our countries like those who are competing with governments, considering the fact that big funding organizations like World Fund, for example, they deal with states. I wanted to say that in Cameroon today, we are a little different in a way that the government has acknowledged our importance, because I should say that the summit of the UN Secretary General in 2019 was launched in New York with the FMDV, the Cameroonian government. We came with that initiative. So we want to say here that we are not coming here as a competitor next to states or governments, but we are here to bring an important to make contribution here to help with the research that can help accompany or support fundings in the region. In Cameroon, I should say that something that was well understood, because we are working with the European Union, we work with the IFDB, we work with CAFW. So the level is well known, because all the stakeholders or players know their roles in these institutions. And today, the technical support that those institutions should have will be truly capacity building, because we see that the accreditation process, adaptation fund or mitigation process, those are long processes. But with the help of those institutions, as in Cameroon, we are on the terminal or last phase in this process. We think that in Africa, that support should be done by international institutions so that we may achieve our goal. That's what I wanted to say in a few words. I thank you.
Irlando Antonio Gonçalves Gomes. You are the managing director of the Bank of Amazonia in Brazil. The Bank of Amazonia has been actively addressing urban climate finance challenges in the Amazon region through initiatives such as BASA Digital and the Amabio program. Brazil stands out for its strong track record in localizing finance and its uniquely rich ecosystem of subnational development banks, SDBs, a model that is arguably unparalleled globally. In your view, how can SDBs further expand their role in developing tailored financial solutions for local governments and serve as key intermediaries, bridging international and federal financing sources to drive sustainable urban climate action? The floor is yours.
Good afternoon. It's a great pleasure to be here today. Yes, subnational development banks have a quite important role in structuring innovative financial solution for the local government and provide financial for local government, and to strengthen this role as a key intermediary between international and federal financial sources is important. to advance in three main fronts. So the first one is development of innovative financial instrument, so SDBs can expand the offering to the tailored needs, such as green credit lines, financial guarantee, and blended finance. And at Banco da Amazonia, this initiative has already demonstrated the potential of the programs that combines public and private resources to finance climate mitigation. The second point is strengthen technical institutional capacity. So internal capacity and assistance are important and fundamental to ensure that municipalities and states can structure in projects that are aligned with the international requirements. So SDBs can be a catalyst in this process. And the third is expand international cooperation and access to the climate funds. So this partnership of SDBs and multinational cooperation like IDBs or World Bank, it is so important to develop each one lock source of finance that will generate more accessible credit lines to the government. So Brazil has a unique development bank system and a huge country. So we need, in the federal level, in the regional level where we are inserted, to attend all the clients. Banco da Amazonia serves the north region of Brazil, where Belém City will host the COP Fund. So we look forward to discuss with you in November all this question and to show the world the importance of SDBs. Thank you.
Muito obrigado. You're the first one to not take the 5 minutes, so thank you very much because you are very late. Thank you. Yes, we can applaud. Thank you. And indeed, you will be the host of COP, so we really look forward in collaborating with you. Now, I'll give the floor to the unique woman speaker on stage, and we are very sorry for this. Srilata Kamila, you are Director and Chief Investment Officer in UNCDF. So this conversation is, I think, is honey to your ears, as we say in French. I don't know if it's the same thing in English, but it's a good expression, don't worry. It's good to have honey in your ears, apparently. UNCDF has become the first UN agency to access the European Union EFSD Plus guarantee program, securing 154 million euros for the guarantee facility for sustainable cities. The facility aims to support innovative infrastructure financing solutions in secondary cities and river basins across sub-Saharan Africa and Southeast Asia. In light of this development, how do you envision instruments like the FSD Plus guarantee program transforming urban climate finance in the coming years, particularly for cities and in low-income countries? And what role will UNCDF play in assisting these cities in accessing and effectively utilizing such financing mechanisms to advance sustainable urban development? This is why you only have 5 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Just to say, as a fresh entrant to FIX, UNCDF is very delighted, especially as a non-credit rated hybrid organization that looks at both development and finance. We're able to be an off-balance sheet risk taker that might be able to come in and plug into a lot of the issues that are being discussed here. As has been said by many speakers, and in fact my prior role before joining CDF about a month ago as a head of adaptation for UNDP, definitely seeing a lot of the challenges around climate resilient infrastructure. Some of these have been mentioned today, but I also wanted to point out that there's also a lot of issues around information asymmetries from perceived to real risk, especially in low-income countries where data gaps mean that you can't really forecast and plan really well unless you really get into climate risk vulnerability assessments and ensuring what has been spoken of before, which is an alignment between policy, planning, and investment. Now, besides that, one of the reasons that the EFSD guarantee program and UNCDF being able to lead a unique initiative with the EU support on the Sustainable Cities Guarantee is that there is a real constraint, even though we are talking about, creditworthiness and absorption capacity, as was mentioned. It's also an issue that even if there are bankable projects, often it means that cities can't bring them forward because it would mean that a debt on their balance sheet would be, or even an on-balance sheet SPV, would count towards the public sector debt. And that obviously creates a lot of issues around soaring credit rating and the implications to the borrowing limits. So while these kinds of guarantee programs don't solve the issue by itself, I think it's really critical that it helps move these initiatives forward by helping guarantee cities to finance infrastructure projects, but also guaranteeing local businesses that can actually advance local economic development. So in that sense, you mentioned the 154 million guarantee. While we are still negotiating, concluding the term sheet, the aim is to provide this kind of coverage, as you said, 70% sub-Saharan Africa with remaining in Southeast Asia, and look at ticket sizes anywhere between 5 and 50 million in terms of the worth of the value of the guaranteed loans. And the focus really is climate resilient infrastructure and going into cities that are deemed as high risk to unlock this kind of capital. And being able to focus to really unlock both public and private capital besides the 154 million public capital that's being mobilized. And I think it's, again, goes back to some of the high impact sectors that were mentioned, using this to scale up and replicate innovative financing models, whether it's green bonds or PPPs in secondary cities, or financing some of the sectors the World Bank mentioned around low carbon, circular waste management, or energy efficiency, or renewable energy. So we do think it's a very unique opportunity for UN to unlock the EU guarantees to focus on LDCs and last mile markets. And towards your second question, the primary focus is going to be what much of other speakers have talked about, and to provide about 70% coverage to national and subnational banks and development banks for them to provide loans to city or city-led projects. And this would also be accompanied, like the guarantees could be deployed alongside CDF instruments, loans and guarantees, but also instruments of those of partner lending bank. Technical assistance was mentioned, so working with municipal governments on strengthening local financial systems, structuring bankable projects, enhancing revenue streams. I think it's going to be critical. And we are working with project preparation facilities and financial institutions, including ICLE-TAP and C40, to look at bankable projects. And once these are sourced, to really look at local financial products that are suited to the markets and investments. And it's really important to embed the climate resilience as a criteria as part of these projects. So just to conclude, to say that I think that kind of de-risking is a critical part of the piece of puzzle, and the facility is intended to be one part of that puzzle, and to really work with partners, and especially the Malaga Coalition that many of the agencies, EU, UN Habitat, ECLG, in partnership with FMDB, etc., to really be part of this partnership to see how we can unlock financing and funding for sustainable infrastructure. Thank you.
Thank you. That was perfect. Andy, it's your turn. Andy Deacon, you are co-managing director at the Global Covenant of Mayors for Climate and Energy. The GCOM has been a significant force in uniting cities to tackle climate change. And we know you worked behind the scenes to ensure the MDB commitment of scaling up, which we have already talked about. So now, what are some of the strategies GCOM has employed to support cities in scaling up their climate action plans and securing necessary funding?
Thank you, Carlos, and good afternoon, colleagues. Also a fixed newcomer, but delighted to be around the table and to be engaging with an important audience for our many thousands of mayors. So when it comes to what have we been doing and how are we providing support, just want to touch on 3 or 4 things very briefly. Firstly, we played an important role in highlighting the need on behalf of those cities. So just last week at Urban Shift, we launched a new global urban climate finance snapshot, compiling information on projects for which cities are seeking investment. It uses data disclosed through 2024 through the CDP Track reporting platform, one of the reporting systems to the Global Covenant of Mayors, and just over 2,500 climate-related projects were reported from over 600 cities in 75 different countries. And the total reported investment need for projects surged by nearly a quarter in 2024, reaching $86 billion. But nearly half of those projects remain in the early stages of development, requiring technical assistance and further support to develop towards bankability. And the top global sectors of projects seeking financing are buildings and energy efficiency, transport and nature-based solutions, biodiversity and urban greening, highlighting demand in particular for greater adaptation and resilience finance work in cities. And on that note, secondly, we played a role in advocating for change. You've heard a lot about this convening of mayors and multilateral development banks in Washington last April. 3 clear asks from a group of mayors, including the GCOM's Global Governing Board of Mayors, many of whom were signatories to the letter, seeking requests to include urban climate finance in corporate and climate strategies of the development banks, a call to integrate cities and urban climate action in country and sector assistance strategies, and thirdly and finally, a call to develop specific urban climate action programs that combine technical assistance, scaled up concessional finance, and enhanced support for private finance mobilization as well as public. The response from the MDBs was very welcome, and we do look forward to reconvening in April of this year in the margins of the spring meetings. The response made it very clear that there was a commitment to increasing urban climate finance, but also importantly to scaling urban adaptation. And that's something that we also know that the COP30 presidency are also interested in, is this role of urban nature and nature-based solutions and ways and means to more effectively address the urban climate adaptation finance gap. Thirdly, we have been providing support and project preparation. You've heard from Ambroise and from other colleagues about some of the project preparation facilities, including the City Climate Finance Gap Fund. The Global Covenant of Mayors has been working through a partnership with the World Bank as part of awareness raising and outreach in relation to Gap Fund. We've engaged more than 3,000 city participants from 91 countries, sharing information about the Gap Fund, its application process, and eligibility criteria, and project ideas. Just over 225 of them came forward from over 300 cities between the middle of 2023 and the end of 2024. And almost 70% of those ideas come from fast-growing intermediary cities. And the Global Covenant is kicking off some research to look in more detail, not only at the financing side of things, but in more detail about some of the enabling frameworks, in particular in fast-growing intermediary cities. Finally, we've been leading some work together with a number of the global networks and other partners on linking the local and national levels. The Coalition for High Ambition Multi-Level Partnerships, launched at COP28, has given cities a platform to work more closely with national governments, allowing alignment of city-level initiatives with national climate strategies. And it's leading towards new commitments at COP30, looking to enhance the urban content and contributions of the subnational level towards the delivery of the National Climate Plans, or NDCs. And at Urban Shift, again, just last week, we launched a new Champ Finance Guidebook, a resource laying out how national governments can help cities and regions access the finance that's so urgently needed. It provides practical solutions on removing barriers and unlocking investment, and hopes to ensure that finance flows more effectively to the local level. You've heard from others, notably from the Mayor Marrero, who spoke very eloquently about a joint letter on behalf of African mayors calling on national governments to make a number of changes, including strengthening municipal finance frameworks, equipping intermediaries more effectively, and again embedding green investment needs into national climate plans. And we look forward to continuing to support those efforts through our alliance of partners around the world. Thank you.
Thank you, Laurence.
Thank you very much. We're running out of time, so for our last panel, I will ask our speaker to try to be as short as possible, because this last panel is very important, because we're going to talk about partnership, and I think every single speaker so far has highlighted the need for partnership. So really looking forward to hearing from you how concrete cooperation model, cross-cutting partnership can actually be used in scaling up urban finance. So first, Nicolas Picciondino, Secretary General of IDFC, hosted by AFD, and of course IDFC is a kind of raison d'être of partnership, the kind of inspiring club of CEO that inspired the FIX, which has now developed. Can you share with us how IDFC, and especially some initiatives like the IDFC facility and NUCA program, can actually bring concrete ideas in terms of partnership to leverage sustainable urban investments? Nicolas, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you. Thank you very much. And as you said, partnerships are at the heart of the IDFC, the International Development Finance Club. Actually, we are a club of 27 public development banks, regional and national development banks. And if I come back to the question, and maybe more the question of the summit being a summit of solutions, I have solutions to really increase the number of projects, of urban project financing, is to better use the public development banks. And we are here as a system, so to better use them as partners, to invest alongside them and to delegate more funds to the public development banks, and maybe more to the national and the subnational development banks. Why? Because they are on the ground. They know the specificities of the projects, they know the specificities of the countries they are working in, and they also have the trust of the local authorities they are working with. But trying to be concrete and short, coming back to the NUCA program. The NUCA program is the first program we created to tackle urban climate financing. And the beauty of this program is that it combines both technical assistance for the members, but also for the cities. So it's a program that is financing 5 countries and 5 national development banks in 5 countries. So we provide them technical assistance. It's consultants directly placed in the national development banks, trying to train the teams and trying to enhance the procedures to be sure that our members will be better armed to finance the local authorities. But having said that, so we are sure that our members will be better armed. But if we don't have bankable projects to be financed, there will be no connection, and so no need to have those consultants. And so this is really the beauty of the NUCA program. We also have money, and I want to pay tribute, by the way, I should have said that at the beginning. It's financed by the German government, so if there are any Germans, I'm really, really grateful to the German government for providing the funds. We have the possibility to finance also the cities to be sure that they will come with more more bankable projects that are easier financed by our members. So this is really the essence of the NUCA program. And if I take also my other hat as the head of the Public Development Bank at AFD, and the previous one, and I see Thierry here, I was the regional director in Martinique for the local office, and we created a program for the cities and especially to finance the schools. And I don't know if you know, but in France, the schools, they are owned by the cities. And Martinique is in a zone where there are a lot of earthquakes. And when I arrived, I was really super shocked by the fact that 90% of the school were not protected to face earthquakes. So we decided, and the problem was there was a lot of money that waited to be invested to finance those schools. So what we did, and this is also the beauty of the public development banks and how they can aggregate, and so aggregate funds, and how they can better partners with a lot of institutions. We aggregated funds from the European Union and funds from the French states to help the cities to first have feasibility studies, then to have a lot of subventions, and at the end, with this program, the remaining amount that is being paid by the cities is only 5%. And like this, they can finance and restructure their school to be sure that the students are well protected against earthquake. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much, Nicolas, for that insightful example. I may turn now to Professor Edgar Petersen, board member of DBSA. There are many dialogue around the needs for scaling climate adaptation and finance that will require unprecedented collaboration. And as we gather here today with you as one of the hosts of the summit, and considering your new Pan-African mandate, could you share the strategy and tools the Development Bank on Southern Africa used to address these needs in the region? And maybe some of the lessons that has been taken from South African experience. Thank you, Professor. The floor is yours.
Thank you so much. So I'm a board member of DBSA, but my day job is a professor at the University of Cape Town in urban studies. And as part of that work, I also lead a program called the African Mayoral Leadership Initiative, which is an amazing opportunity to really understand on the ground some of the really tough challenges that we've got to contend with. So firstly, a little bit about the bank. We're owned by the South African government. Our mandate has, as you've just indicated, recently been expanded to the whole of sub-Saharan Africa. We're somewhat daunted by this challenge and trying to make sense of what it means exactly. So it's a good moment to be in this context. Our primary function is long-term risk capital, so that's where we come in, but obviously with a strong developmental focus. And as we ponder what this expansion into sub-Saharan Africa means, we are incredibly alert to the fact that we've got to understand this mandate in the context of a profound demographic transition, both urbanization but also doubling of the population within an environmental polycrisis. And the polycrisis is not just climate, it's obviously biodiversity depletion and soil health erosion as well. So within this context and the demographic transition and the lack of formal jobs for most young people in Africa's cities, our agenda is to understand how do we connect the urbanization transition with the infrastructure ask, but within an understanding that we've got to drive green industrialization. Our cities have got to become economic industrial hubs. So in South Africa, we of course have a deep portfolio. We've worked with municipalities for a long time, and in the last few years, we've really branched out into climate-related projects, related from IPPs to water reuse programs, mass transit programs, and so forth. But what seems clear to us is that when you look at the numbers around the financing gap that often gets bandied about in forums like this, it tends to be on the basis of conventional infrastructure solutions. I don't think we've run the hard numbers on sustainable infrastructure solutions and what that financing cost is. And the reality is a lot of our institutions, the professionals, are geared towards business of the past and not business of the future. And so there's an important capacity question we believe is important to confront. Talking about constraints, the big elephant in the room is that most national governments on the continent are still reluctant to empower their cities and subnational governments to be able to borrow, to have the legal authority to act in the interests of their citizens. And as a result of that and other systemic factors, risk remains mispriced. And this is a huge, huge driver of the cost of capital, of course. So what we see to be part of the solutions portfolio in the, sort of why partnerships are needed is we have to use the muscle of the public development banks to really drive the enabling environment agenda forward. That's a precondition. We've got to strengthen project management and preparation capacity at the city scale, and what we've heard from other colleagues are really important. Thirdly, the public-private partnership frame has got to include communities. There is no way you can do partnerships without the communities themselves, given the nature of the social fabric within African cities. And that's maybe not so clear at the moment. And finally, the knowledge institutions of the continent has got to be in the conversation. And I don't just mean universities and think tanks and so forth, but also, again, social movements that represent the citizens that will have to be partners in how we design and deliver these services because of the price point at which we need to get this in, given the low-income context. So within that framework, we really believe that the fact that partnerships is on the agenda is critical, but that we still need to broaden the aperture so that we can really build on the cultural specificity and fabric of African cities and settlements to be at the heart of the institutional model that we build. I'll leave it at that. Thank you.
Well, thank you very much. And now I'd like to introduce Jackie Kemlou Jagbu, Mayor of Chiang and representative and president of Communes et Villes Unies du Cameroon, CVUC. So the CVUC has deployed an impressive institutional strategy to strengthen the economic development potential of Cameroonian cities through its program, Communes de Production, and to promote them internationally through the organization of JECOM, Journée économique internationale des communes, and with the next edition scheduled to take place in early June in Yaoundé. Mr. Jagbu, I think that we just heard like there are some really critical cultural way to approach some of these partnership and capacity to organize dialogue. So we're really looking forward to listen based on your experience, what you can draw as lessons from that amazing experience built in Cameroon. Thanks.
Thank you for the word given. Honorable panelists, distinguished invités.
As Association of Cities in Cameroon, we have taken both full decision to integrate development and also climate resilience. Laid on the study that will bring investment in the municipality, and this work has been sustained by the economical day of city that will set our city as partners that gather partners, private as well as public. We need a change, operational change on the way cities and region has mobilizing finance. That's why I would like to echo what the mayor of Joburg has said, that the restructuration of platform are really essential. Not only short-term project, but also the sustainable mechanism that will guarantee the flux of finance where they are more needed. As a platform, our experience shows, in fact, that the cycle of finance at short term brings so much difficulty in the transformation of cities and region. That platform really is an operational solution to align the priorities as well as region on the financial, local finance and international finance, and also the long-term financing. The development bank will play a crucial role not only the partner in the conception of local government. And I'm very glad that this year we will launch our pilot program with the support of the French Agency of Energy, and this will allow us to renew the format of that platform and also to
I'd like to come back on the role of public banks of development, which are structured in order to amplify fundings. We have programs like in different kinds of productions. So we propose the basic, and that should be accompanied by a financial ecosystem which guarantees its success. That's why we invite banks to go beyond what we're talking about, so that we may establish financial mechanisms that will serve cities and regions in a systemic manner. That involves the development of financial tools adapted to the investment of cities and regions. And here we should strengthen capacity in financial engineering locally in order to structure at the local level, because we have best opportunities in our territories. We should strengthen mayors and governments, their institutions, so we should also guarantee the feeding of pipelines so that our territories can be transformed. In conclusion, we need a commitment, a sustainable commitment. As I said, services should not only plead for funding, but we should have initiatives for investment, for municipal planning, but with a financial architecture which helps in long-term investment. For the Public Development Bank today, we invite you to collaborate with us so we may establish permanent financial structures today, so we may not be beneficiaries of funding, but we should have something in for a long term. Let's build together financial ecosystems that will resist in time, and I thank you for your kind attention.
Merci beaucoup des écosystèmes.
Thank you very much for the financial ecosystem that will resist with time.
Sharing the experience of multi-stakeholder alliance, including civil society organization, and I'm very pleased to introduce Jacob Duer, CEO Alliance to End Plastic Waste. So of course, based on your extensive experience working with numerous organizations to address the pressing urban issues to ban plastic waste. Well, how would you summarize the main challenge that you have been facing in trying to build this partnership?
Thank you very much, and as the last speaker, I will try to remain short. Just very briefly first on the Alliance. The Alliance to End Plastic Waste is a global non-profit organization that's fully funded by the private sector, companies across the value chain, with the objective of putting an end to plastic waste in the environment and creating a circular economy for plastics. Relatively young as organization, only existed for 5 years, but we've managed to raise more than $600 million from our member companies from the private sector, as well as established a private equity fund on plastic circularity, where we are looking at a close later this year, and we're expecting to attract around $300 million into the fund. Our business model is to develop solutions, deploy them in the countries where they are needed, mainly in developing countries where we are working, and de-risk them so that they can become, in reality, bankable and investable projects for either private equity funds, for private companies, or for development finance institutions of different nature. I'll give you an example of what we are doing. In the interest of time, I'll keep that short. But in Indonesia, which is one of our priority countries, the Alliance has invested more than $60 million into creating waste management infrastructure solutions to prevent the leakage of plastic waste into the environment and create a circular economy. Our experience and our investments has resulted in a very strong collaboration and partnership. Partnership is the foundation for our success with the Asian Infrastructure Investment Bank as well as with the government of Indonesia. We are now in the process, together with the bank and the government, in rolling out a $180 million infrastructure solution project that's going to address waste management for more than 13 million people in more than 10 cities and regencies in Indonesia. In other words, we are using our capital, which is grant or concessional or first loss when that is needed, to unlock the capital that sits with the development finance institutions. We provide our capital and our technical expertise and the experience that we have built up as part of the partnership. We use it for technical assistance and project preparation as well. And I think what we are seeing is that many of the development banks are looking for partners like us that has grants or concessional means that we can provide, often which is a requirement for the development finance institutions to go in. We're in the process of developing similar opportunities in South Africa. We are in the process of discussing with development finance institutions, including the Development Bank of South Africa, in rolling out a $200 million program on waste management, again, blended financing in action, putting public, private, and philanthropic capital to work together. So a new financing model in many ways to address sustainability issues, to address development issues, using capital from the private sector to make these investments bankable, and hopefully with that attract further capital so we can truly go to scale and move the needle in ending plastic pollution. So let me stop here, but that's the model that we are applying. As I said, the route and the route to success is with the development finance institutions through partnerships, and it's only if we are blending financing, blending our technical expertise as well as our experience on the ground, that we can truly address the challenges that everyone has been describing in the cities. Thank you very much.
Thank you. This is actually a great conclusion to the session. First, I would like just to thank the speakers and the participants who remained in the room. We are only 15 minutes late. Considering that we started with 30 minutes late, that I think it's okay. We are actually 15 minutes earlier than scheduled. We basically, I think, underscored the importance of the alignment between global policies and national commitments, the national building of confidence between the stakeholders, those country platforms. I think that's a key element coming from our conversation, and obviously the partnering between all the levels of action in the development banks, in the public development banks, and their partners, UN agencies, the guarantees that are provided. I think that we will meet again for FFD4, for COP. We will invite you, we as local and regional governments networks invite you to the table, to the conversation in April during the spring meetings also, to make sure that we can operationalize this conversation. And I would like again to thank the subnational development banks here, especially FECOM and BASA, who joined the conversation, DBSA of course, because you are key, you are not present in these international settings usually, and your voice is very much needed if we want to advance operationally. So it's a message also for the MDBs to pay better attention to these specific players. Laurence?
Yeah, I think you said it all. I think we all leave the room with a lot of ideas, and as we move forward to the next Forum for Development, AGECA, G20 and COP30, I think that we can, let us together advocate for systematic change and ensure both that urban development remains a top priority, but also to make sure there is a systemic ecosystem that both ensure, for example, that cities could be involved in NDC preparation and planning, but also in the financial architecture that is being redesigned at the moment. Thank you all for your presence, and thank you for Carlos for heavy lift on preparing this table ronde. Thank you.
Thank you, Laurence. And I've been advised to ask you to join the plenary too, because it's beginning now. And I just want to finish by thanking all the co-organizers and partners of the session, DBSA with Adele, EBRD with Lynn and Erisa, the World Bank with Augustin, FMDV, Gabriela, Fantine, Libertad and Sangru, and the partners, AIB, the Alliance to End Plastic Waste, the Alliance of Subnational Development Banks in Africa and Latin America and the Caribbean, CCFLA, City Climate Gap Fund, EIB, GECOM, GIZ, IDFC, and UNCDF. Thank you, everyone, and we need to be in plenary 2 now. Thank you.
Thank you.